Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Munoz, CEO of the cultural communications agency, Flash. Each episode, I bring on a different business leader who's doing some really interesting game-changing work. And this episode is no different. I am so excited to have Jason Fairchild, who's the co-founder and CEO of tvScientific. It's a fascinating company, and it's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Jason.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, you know how this works. The first question is always the same, and I'm always fascinated by the answers, and I'm excited to hear what yours will be. So, Jason, what was your first job?
Well, my first job was selling insurance door to door, and this is after school, of course, if you don't count cutting lawns and construction work over summers. And it was in California, and that was my day job. And what I also did at the same time was because I was intrigued with a technology called holographic technology. So I volunteered in evenings and weekends at a company called LA Holographics. So that was unpaid, but it was my sort of indulging in my passion for technology while paying the bills through insurance sales during the day. So yeah, not glamorous, but that's what it was.
Oh, wow. You sold insurance door to door?
Yeah, it was truly awful.
Oh my God.
But it was a great training in sales because you learn basically the foundations of any revenue producing activity, which is it's a numbers game, and back in the day, the mantra was if you got through 20 presentations a day, you'd be successful. So it was purely a numbers game, and in order to get 20 presentations, you had to knock on X number of doors. And what I found was that as difficult as it was true. If you could get through a certain number of presentations, the numbers always hit the bottom line. So and that that's a lifelong lesson, and we still, in terms of running revenue organizations, we still talk about, I still talk about that today, which is it's a numbers game. And the funny thing about that is that it's not always the door you knock on that produces the revenue. So if, today, if we go and we do X number of email outbounds, or we do X number of conversations, oftentimes the results come from unanticipated areas. So I have this kind of mantra: outflow equals inflow. So the number of sort of outreaches, whatever way that happens, back in the day it was knocking on doors, and now it's whether emails or outreaches through LinkedIn, will produce a vacuum that generates inflow or inbound in often non-direct ways. So it's a little non-scientific, but I find it to be true.
It's so true. And, again, it's interesting. Again, the lessons that you learn on those first jobs that you mentioned, whenever anyone comes on the podcast, always just so endemic to where people are today, because it sort of ingrains in them things and structures of how to work in business in a way that just helps them find their way. And your example is no different.
Indeed.
So now, I'm sure there was a pretty fascinating journey from selling door to door and working at the hologram company for free to where you are now. So what was that journey like?
Well, I did a bunch of things, but I'll just, I ended up in technology, right about the time in the mid 90s. And I wasn't in technology. I worked for Hertz Rent-A-Car and a bunch of other places. And I was with a friend talking about this thing called the internet, and we wanted to get involved in it in some way. And we came up with an idea to, it was a corporately sponsored treasure hunt, and we wanted to go and pitch this concept to people. And my friend had grown up with a person called Sky Dayton, who had just recently founded Earthlink, an ISP rather, in LA. So we went and pitched our various friends, and he pitched Sky Dayton on the concept, and Sky said, "Hey, great idea, but I'm kind of busy with this launching Earthlink, why don't you, to my friend, why don't you come work for me? So my friend William went and worked for Earthlink, and then within a couple of months, I joined him, and we started, building Earthlink from a 15-person company in LA to what it became as a multiple thousand-person, national ISP. So that was in the early days of the internet, and that was kind of my start in technology. And then from there,
Wow.
I ended up at a couple years later at a company called GoTo.com, which pioneered the paid search business model before it even existed. And I was, again, in the early team, I think employee 20 or so, and grew that from, a small pre-revenue company to, I think we got bought by Yahoo 5 or 6 years later for, almost $2 billion. And that was an
Didn't everybody at that point?
Say again?
Didn't everybody get bought by Yahoo for a couple billion?
You're exactly right. Yeah, but that was a fun journey, and that's actually related to what I'm doing today, because if you think about what paid search did, is it really provided the first easily accessible marketing platform for small businesses or large businesses alike, where they could drive demonstrable results almost overnight, measurable in the form of a paid click, which it resulted in literally, I think it's 9 million businesses now participate in the paid search business model. And fast forward to what I'm doing today, we felt like TV is interesting because it's historically dominated by about 300 to 500 advertisers. So it's a $72 billion market. About 80% of that is driven by the national brands like, Ford or Pepsi or whomever. And we felt like that is really interesting because, search or social have 9 million advertisers. So if we could do what we did for paid search in TV, which is to make it, easily accessible, so quote unquote democratize access for any marketer, from P&G to ad agencies to the flower shop down the street, and make it as measurable as digital. So really express the results of TV in a digital first way, website visitors, sales, et cetera. We could open up the market to millions of advertisers instead of just a few hundred that participate in TV today. So that's what tvScientific is all about. And it's very related to what we did back in 1998 in the paid search category. So in many ways, it's sort of a continuation of that mission, of that journey, of that story.
Awesome. It's fascinating because you were there at the beginning of when the internet actually became the internet. And you think about how much has happened in 25 years, and how we market, how we communicate, but also how we sell. And it is just remarkable considering that all happened in 25 years versus the first, say, 75 years of business in the US. It really is incredible to see how technology has shortened the window for every single thing.
It is remarkable how much change has happened over just a couple of decades. I mean, when we started Earthlink back in the day, I mean, I think we had no smartphones existed. It was just a radically different business environment, for sure.
So you see it all and have been through the kind of ups and downs. Where do you guys sit now at tvScientific?
Well, we're an early stage company. We launched in April of this year, after building the product for about a year prior. We've been funded to the tune of $2.5 or $2.7 million. And right now we're scaling rapidly, onboarding customers onto the platform. And when I say customers, it's really any advertiser, generally speaking, digital first, performance oriented advertisers. So guys who market on Facebook or Google, moving them into TV so they can they can drive performance in TV just like they can on search and social and measure it in the same way. So we're scaling rapidly. We're onboarding customers. We're helping them buy media through our platform, and all on a return on an ad spend or ROI basis, meaning for every $100 they spend on TV, they measure what their return on ad spend is. So it's very performance oriented, and I would say our stage right now is early but scaling rapidly.
Awesome. Now, everyone's always trying to quantify these numbers as to like, okay, what's my real ROI? What makes TV Scientific different in this particular moment?
Well, historically in TV, you really can't measure return on ad spend. It's sort of a,
it's fluffy.
It's very fluffy. It's almost an emotional buy. You want to, a lot of people want to see their image on TV, or a lot of marketers just want to, create broad, awareness through reach and frequency marketing. But trying to measure that back to the cash register has been really difficult. Largely, there's been technology constraints for traditional, I'll just call it linear TV or traditional TV, broadcast television, where you can't really measure it outside of panel-based measurement, which is just, inherently limited. So what's changed is the connected TV and the cord cutter phenomenon. Just over the last few years, people have walked away from cable services in favor of streaming services just in astonishingly, rapid rate, driven by COVID and other factors. And today there's 95 million households that engage in streaming television in one form or another. Samsung came out with an interesting study a few months ago that 63% of all TV viewing time today across the US is now on streaming services. So what's changed is these streaming services are on connected televisions that are connected to the internet. So you can now, in theory, you can execute measurement that's very, very digital-like because it's delivered over the internet. So that means we can deterministically connect the dots between an ad exposure or a TV ad exposure or ad delivery to a household and an outcome, whether that outcome is, did someone see the Domino's ad on TV and then go to Domino's.com and order a pizza? Or did they see, an ad for a video game in a household and then go and download that video game at one of the digital stores and activate it? So now we can connect those dots deterministically. So a marketer can literally measure how much did they spend and how many downloads did they get, or how many website visitors did they get, or how many sales did they get as a result of that TV ad investment.
Wow! So you all really can see that. That's incredible. Are you all kind of the pioneers on this side of the universe of being able to go that granular?
We are the first platform of our kind, period, full stop. It doesn't really exist anywhere else where a marketer can go and set up their campaign and run it and see the actual results. Again, whatever those results, whatever they mean to the marketer. So again, it could be a website visitor, it could be a sale on a website, it could be a download activation. Whatever they determine is important to them, we can measure it. So yes, it's the first platform of its kind.
That's so awesome. So, looking at the landscape, where do you guys hope to be in like a year from now?
Well, the mission is to empower the 9 million advertisers that participate in search advertising and social advertising to move on to TV. Now, we won't get all 9 million, but I think, if we go after the larger of them, so the top, several 100,000 advertisers that already probably do video on Facebook or Instagram, and move them into TV, that will be a huge success. So, our year goal is to get to 100 million plus in revenue, just by helping digital marketers move to television in a very digital first way. So measure it just like they measure digital. So that's what we want to accomplish in the next year.
That's so cool. But also it's just like, it's awesome to hear that like this finally exists, because like this is sort of like the missing piece for so many brands and advertisers, because you realize like, I can't figure this out. And why do I need Nielsen when I've got tvScientific?
Yeah, I mean, it's really compelling, because if you think about the television, it's central to all of our households, and it's the most impactful screen in our lives. And if you compare a TV ad with a digital ad, I think there's really no comparison. I mean, if you think about sight, sound, motion, and emotion that can be driven through a television ad. I mean, we all remember Morris the cat and Be Like Mike and all of the iconic TV commercials. And the reason we remember them is because it's a high impact delivery device, if you will, for a message. And if I would challenge anyone to also try to remember the last Facebook ad you saw or the last Instagram ad you saw. And I think the answer is none of us can remember any of them. And that's because the format is so different. And you see those ads in a very distracted manner versus television. We're all 55-inch screens now, so or bigger. So the impact is much greater. But it's just not been available to the marketers that engage in digital marketing until now. So we think it's a big opportunity. And it's also, if you think about it, I think it's worth noting that if we can get a few million of these advertisers into the TV industry, into TV advertising, where only a few hundred exist now, it's going to create some interesting changes. One is it's going to put a lot more ad dollars in play for television. And those ad dollars will enable programmers to produce better and more programming choices for consumers. And consumers ultimately will get better choices as a result of that, better content choices. And I think that's a really interesting sort of flywheel effect or virtuous cycle where those better choices will attract even more consumers to streaming services. And I think that we're already past the tipping point on that. And I would expect within just a few short years, we'll have millions more advertisers in TV, and streaming services will be even better than they are today from a content choice point of view. And that will attract pretty much everybody that's not a cord cutter to cut the cord and move over to this new form of content delivery.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about like, I kept saying there's no way I'm getting all these other streaming services, but I like have one card that sets to all my subscriptions on Apple. And I got my phone was blowing up yesterday because yesterday was the 6th, and so they're all somehow due on the 6th. And it was Paramount Plus, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus. And I was like, oh my God, why do I have all these services? I'm like, wait, because I watch this show, and this show, and this show. Like it is interesting that it is like a first world problem whereby like I literally have 5 streaming services plus I have cable, but I know I'm not the only one, but also like I watch them for the shows, or I can go whenever I want. I can look on something I watch when I'm like on the couch with my iPad, some of the stuff I watch in bed. Like the content has gotten so good on these streaming services that as a customer who you need to advertise to, who lives in New York City and likes nice stuff, like I'm your perfect customer. So you've got to find me in all these different places. So it makes sense to use technology like yours to like really see what happens. If I see it, I'm gonna buy it because I'm gonna use my phone or my iPad after I just watched Ted Lasso. I'm gonna buy that thing. Like you can see how the behavior is shifted.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because I'm like you. I have I don't know 4 or 5 subscription plus I have cable. But I think an interesting dynamic will start to play out, which is this concept of subscription fatigue, which means that, wait a second, can I really afford cable plus, 4 other subscriptions? And I think what everyone is starting to realize is that there's probably, a max number of subscriptions people can support until they go to sort of an ad-supported version. So all of the major streaming services are coming out with an ad-supported version versus a no-ad version, and more people are opting into the ad-supported version just because of subscription fatigue, which I think that trend will continue, and I think it's a really positive trend because it opens up more choices for consumers. And if you compare we'll call ad load, which is the number of ads per 30-minute episode of content, it's still, about 25% of what traditional TV is on streaming services. So we can still deliver great content with a much lower ad footprint or ad load on streaming than on traditional TV, and deliver a great experience that's reachable to within reach to everyone because it's ad supported. And then the other thing you said is interesting is the user modality of or the consumer modality. We're all the same. When we're at home, we're watching the TV, often a large screen TV, but we all have our phones or tablets either on our lap or within a couple of feet. So the idea of seeing a Domino's pizza ad and picking up your phone and ordering the Domino's pizza while you're watching TV, or checking out a car, or checking out another product that's being advertised while you're watching TV it's within normal behavior today. So and that's a really interesting consumer trend, and I think it's going to make TV even more powerful from a quote unquote bottom of funnel, meaning it's not just awareness, but an advertisement delivered to a consumer through this mechanism, TV, can result in an action almost immediately because of the fact that they have their phones or their tablets, or we have our phones and tablets right there within reach while we're watching TV.
It's funny, like you think that, okay, we're sophisticated like business people who don't get sucked in by ads, but I can't tell you, especially, I also think our behavior is completely shifted because of the pandemic and us being home. But like, I have bought so much stuff from watching television and having my phone in my hand at the exact same time, where I'm like, oh, I do need to go buy some Tide. And it's on my phone, and I just go ahead and I literally go and do it. Or I have done this. I have seen the Domino's commercial, like, I kind of want Domino's, and bought Domino's. And it's like, I think a lot of it does have to do with how our behavior has shifted, whereby spending a year and a half at home after spending years on the road traveling, it shifts what you want to buy, the things you want to buy, the quantities with which you want to buy. So the more, and the better, and also you notice the quality of the ads are better. The ads are more diverse. They make, they are a bit more relevant to the actual real world we live in now, and reflect the world that actually is. And so as those ads get better, and my ability to go ahead and just make those purchases continues to speed up, because again, if you think of companies like Shop Pay, Amazon Pay, Affirm, Afterpay, the barriers for me to make quick purchases have come down really fast. And as you do that, the opportunity for spend increases.
It's interesting because you talk about the changing of our patterns, our life patterns with the pandemic. And one example of that I just find astonishing, and it goes back to your point about technology changing so much, is the QR code phenomenon.
Totally.
If you go back just a couple of years, none of it, I couldn't point out a QR code. And then because of the pandemic, we've all gone to restaurants and we've become used to it. And now we all know what they are. And now they're all over TV, whether it's Good Morning America or, on certain TV ads. And we have many marketers that put QR codes on their TV ads, with the expectation that people just, they can either go to the website or just scan the QR code on TV, which is crazy considering that really no one, and I'm in technology, but and I didn't really understand QR codes just a couple of years ago, and now they're everywhere. So it's really interesting to see that kind of change in, sort of technology-driven change happen within such a short period of time.
It's nuts. I couldn't beg a client to put a QR code on a sign 5 years ago for a live event that we would do, and now literally they are on TV. It is the best product rebirth I have ever seen. Because it was one of those things, like, you were made for this moment. I don't want to touch anything ever again, so therefore I will scan this QR code. And think about it, it's sustainable, which is what people care about right now at this moment as well. And it's technically safer because we still are living in a global pandemic. And the amount of information that you can now use. I mean, I'm doing a memorial for my friend over the weekend, and instead of the regular prayer card, like the front is like, the picture and like, I was saying from our friend who passed away. The flip side is a QR code. That QR code links to a memorial page and ways to get in contact with his family and upload photos and memories. And it was like, of course we're going to do a QR code because everyone knows how to use them now. And you're like, it's so remarkable how so much has changed in such a short amount of time.
And how, in retrospect, how self-evident it is. Like, of course,
yeah.
And yet, it takes some unique moment in time for it to hit the tipping point, which, clearly has happened with QR codes. And, I think we're at that unique moment in time for TV advertising to be adopted by, a whole new class of marketers that just haven't been in the game, for all the reasons we talked about. I think we're in that unique moment in time too, in part driven by the pandemic and everyone getting much closer to streaming services and spending a lot more time in front of televisions, whether we like it or not.
Well, it's crazy. We started with Tiger King, and we're now on Ted Lasso. And if you think of like what, how you can sort of bookend the pandemic in those ways, where like we started with like this white trash horror story to like this heartwarming, like, you can be the best you can, but we're all just trying to make it mental health exploration and character growth story. Like, who would have thought? But it also like kind of talks about, our shifting behavior and the things that we care about, and how advertisers will have to sort of are adapting to the types of life that we want to live now. So it is remarkably fascinating. So thinking back on all the work that you've done, what do you think you'd tell 25-year-old Jason?
Wow, that's an interesting question. What would I tell a 25-year-old? I think the key lessons are, get a breadth of experience. Everyone wants to optimize for money. Often people at 25 want to optimize for money or title. Really what you want to optimize for is experiences. Get a breadth of experience. So when you find something that resonates, you'll know it, often by comparison. Like I didn't like selling door-to-door insurance, but it created a foundation for me, A, in sales training, but B, when I found something I absolutely loved, I knew it immediately, and then I could bring a lot of those lessons in. So breadth of experience is one, and then two is, work your ass off. And it's easier to work your ass off in something you really, really like than it is in, knocking on doors selling insurance. But in any case, work your ass off and then find something you love and double down on it. Those are probably just very simple things, but I would, that's a lesson I learned. And I would, I have a 23-year-old and a 25-year-old, two boys. And that's a lesson I try to convey to them, or that's a message I try to convey to them.
Thank you for saying work your ass off, because I am so tired of everyone talking about how easy it is to get where you are because you think you saw somebody raise a bunch of money from a couple of fancy VCs. This requires work. It does not get solved in a day, and you don't magically become an all-star in 30 seconds. And you're gonna have to work your ass off. There is no shortcut. But even if you see folks with a shortcut, it ends up crashing and burning. We always see this. So it's so important for folks to realize that this requires working hard, working your behind off in order to get to where you need to go.
Yeah, the other thing that's related is I look back at my life and I've probably learned the most through failure. And we love to talk about successes and strings of successes, and I've been lucky to have a few of those, but really the most eventful experiences for me and most impactful experiences have been just where I failed and had to work at it and work at it and work at it. So we shouldn't be afraid of failure. We should put ourselves out there as much as we can, knowing that we're going to fail a bunch. It's sort of like knocking on doors. You're going to get a bunch of no's. You're going to get a bunch of failures, but you're going to learn from those. And and the more you do that, the more chances you'll have of success. So fail early, fail often, learn from them, and work your butt off.
Great bits of knowledge for the folks out there listening. Thank you, Jason. But so, and kind of interesting as it relates to that, because the flip side of that is working your butt off, but then also taking care of yourself. So what do you do for your self-care?
So it depends on different phases of life or different sort of work profiles. For the longest time, I was a co-founder at OpenX, and I had I choose to live, near the water in LA, and it was an hour and a half commute to Pasadena where our office was. So that was a different modality, if you will, than today, mm-hmm. where I don't have to spend 3 hours in a day in a car. So today, what I'll start off, I think exercise is important. So I start my day walking the dogs for 5 miles, and during that time, I'm
5 miles.
It's sort of a exercise plus I'm on the phone with my co-founder or the executives at tvScientific while I'm walking, and that's just a super healthy way for me to start the day. And then I think exercise is super important. So I love sports. I play hockey and do those things. So from a physical standpoint, that's a big part of it. And then I like routine. So starting every day, at 7 a.m., walking the dogs, talking work, and okay, what's important today? What happened yesterday? And just sort of resetting from yesterday and setting the agenda for the current day is real important to me. And that routine is, I think, the most important. Is whatever your routine is, once you find that it kind of works for you, to stick with it, and that becomes sort of an anchor that helps you get through whatever's going on. It could be a chaotic situation or it could be normal, but having that kind of true north or that anchor is really important.
And thank you for saying that, because again, I think oftentimes, the misconception of what business leaders have to do and like how they take care of themselves is all over the place. But I think it's so important for folks to understand that it is so important. We're still existing through a pandemic. And so finding our true north, getting our exercise is the only way we're going to be able to survive this effectively. And understanding that like it's still a crazy road. It's going to continue to be a crazy road. But putting yourself in a way to be as healthy as you possibly can is what you absolutely have to do.
Yeah, I think both physically and mentally, and it's different for all of us. Some people start their day meditating for an hour, and other people jog or whatever it is. But I think understanding what works for you and sticking to it as a routine is really the important part.
Yeah, having a routine, like doing something that kind of gives you that like No matter what, I do this. No matter what, I do this, because it gives you a degree of focus that helps when things seem all kind of out of whack. But if you have those things that are always part of you, it comes in so handy. Um, so totally get it. Now, for you, what was a time in all the stuff you've done where you're like, okay, there's no way we're gonna figure this out, and then you did?
There's been a couple of them, but we started a company called OpenX. This was back in 2008, and it was supposed to be an ad exchange in digital, and we raised a bunch of money on the idea that on one idea, which is it was an open source ad technology platform. I don't want to get too jargony, but we built a business plan that we could basically reach out to our open source customers, and open source means basically they don't pay, and they get free software, that we could reach out to them and have them pay and build a business around that. And a couple things happened. One is the 2008 financial crisis happened right after we started this company and raised this money. And two, the second thing that happened was that we quickly realized that the entire premise of our business plan, getting free customers to pay in this context, was a complete failure. So we're sitting there having raised a bunch of money, and having 30 or 40 employees, and we get to the point where this is not going to work. We have to pivot quickly. So that that was a scary moment because of what was going on at a macro level, with the economy, and then realizing and confronting the fact that this business plan that we created and raised money against was just not going to work. So yeah, that was interesting for sure. So I think the second part of the question is, what did we do about it? And we grunted it out. We basically came up with a related business plan, which was to build what's called an ad exchange. So think of New York Stock Exchange, except for advertising. In order for those exchanges to work, you have to get supply and demand, like any marketplace. And we just worked at it. And I remember for really 2 years, every day we did a stand-up meeting. Where are we? Where are we? Where are we with supply? Where are we with demand? Where are we with technology? And we just grunted it out. And then, we were fortunate to come up with this concept of, I'll call it flash trading. It's real-time bidding, what it's called in the industry. And what it means is every ad you see in digital, on your phone, on your computer, on your laptop, every ad you see, there's almost certainly an auction that takes place behind that ad before you see it. And in that auction, there are thousands of bidders, and the winning bid gets to put the ad in front of you. So we ran that auction, and we actually developed and pioneered and patented that technology. And when we finally got a chance to test it, we realized we had something big, and that became the core business for that company. Very different than what we started with, and we grew that to, it's still in existence today, but a $700-800 million company.
That's pretty incredible.
It was scary. It was scary for sure.
But again, you stopped and you figured it out, and then you went full force. There's no better lesson than that. So that's pretty damn awesome. Wow.
Well, maybe there's a lesson here, but we didn't have a choice, right? Because
no reason. You had to go.
And the economy's melting down around you, and you just put one foot in front of the other. You work your butt off. You solve problems, and you also just can't. You have to persevere. You can't expect that 3 days of hard work is gonna get you 10 steps down the road. Often it's not a fast solution. It's consistent effort applied. And then you get lucky sometimes, or you innovate in some way, but even that takes time. So it's all about, going back to that true north, that it's about consistently applying effort and having a routine. In this case, it was, we did our daily stand-ups, where are we? And that led to a day of work trying to solve whatever problems we identified in the day. You do that for two straight years, you're gonna move the needle. So yeah, it was an incredible period, and scary, but also rewarding, because we got out the other side.
Awesome. And that's the lesson. It was crazy, but you found your way through. So really incredible. Like, what a career, Jason. Oh my gosh. So last question for you. Do you have a give and an ask of the audience?
A give or an ask? The ask, of course, would be self-serving. So it would be to, if you have a product or service that you need to market, then consider tvScientific.
Perfect.
The give would be if any listener, wants to reach out and have a dialogue. I always like to talk to, whether it's peers or people earlier in their career. I'm happy to spend some time, share ideas and/or share experiences, if that would be helpful.
Awesome. That's remarkably generous of you. Thank you, Jason. That's always great when guests come on and want to connect and share with other folks. That's just wonderful. And so we'll put your details in the show notes for folks to reach out and say, hey, you heard us on the Reset podcast. Jason, you have so much incredible knowledge just stacked up in your experiences. And oh my God, I could keep talking to you for quite a while because I am so fascinated. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love to talk shop, and this has been great.
Awesome. And that is our show.